Welcome to AP European History with Dr. Brovkin. We continue to talk about the German cultural scene in the 18th century and the movement of Sturm and Drang. We briefly talked about Lessing last time, and now I'd like to focus on Schiller, and now I'd like to talk about one of the greatest German poets, Johann Goethe. Goethe had a very long life. He died in 1830, which is a totally different age than when he was writing with Schiller in Weimar for the theater in the 1780s and 1770s. So he really lived through several generations. Post-Napoleonic Europe is a totally different cultural, political, economic scene. So he had a tremendously successful life. He started out from a university student, and then in the 1780s became a state councillor, a friend of the Duke of Weimar, and then later on a state councillor himself, which means a government of Weimar, a small principality, and made very interesting political reforms. And was active in politics. He met Napoleon. I mean, he met the emperors and kings, and had a very, very rich and long life. But right now, I really want us to understand a little bit about his contribution to civilization, to culture, to German literature. One of the amazing things about Goethe is that he's kind of similar to Rousseau in a sense. He is a playwright, and he's a poet, and he's a philosopher at the same time. Moreover, he's unique in that his philosophy is in his play, like Lessing. It doesn't write philosophical text like Immanuel Kant would. No, he has his philosophical ideas about nature of human beings and life, and they are expressed in literature, in his plays. On top of it all, he was a magnificent poet. He's truly the founder of modern literary German language, and later on I'll read to you one of his poems that make appreciate the beauty of the German language, which usually we don't think of it as a beautiful language, but in Goethe's poems, it is. It sounds very beautiful. In any case, let's start with his first work that really propelled him to be world known immediately, or at least all over Germany. So he's a young man, he's a student. His father doesn't want him to be a writer. He wants him to be a state career, which he did anyway. And then he goes to study, he goes to university, and then from the university in the summer he goes to a small town, and this is the background of actual events that did happen, as a result of which he writes a novel which is called Letters of Sufferings of Young Werther, in German Werther, in English Werther. So 1774, Sorrows of Young Werther. So that's the name of the novel. It consists of letters. It's very fashionable at the time, a format of letters that Werther writes to his friend and tells the friend about his sufferings and about his love, which was unfulfilled. So this is the background. The story basically goes like this: that Werther spends time in a small village, and there he meets a girl, Charlotte, who raises children, her siblings, because her mother died. So she's kind of like a young woman who, although she herself is not married, but she has children to take care of, her siblings. And they fall in love, but they can't have a relationship, because she's supposed to marry Albert, another man. So he's madly in love with her, but he can't do anything. He can't touch her, can't love her, because she's supposed to marry somebody else. So he's in despair, and it's suffering. And this is the beginning of this theme that goes throughout this novel: suffering of unfulfilled love. So he cannot be next to her because it's suffering and suffering. So he goes away. He goes to Weimar. And in Weimar, he meets aristocratic society that does not want to admit him because he is a nobody, because he's poor, he's not an aristocrat. And so he cannot be in Weimar, so he goes back, and he just cannot. This Charlotte, she draws him, so he just goes back to her. He can't live without seeing her. At least seeing her is good enough. So he goes back, and he sees her, but that it inflames his passion even more, and he can't bear it, and there's suffering. Again, even more suffering. This is all in the novel. Finally, he tells her that this cannot go on, and he is going to commit suicide. And she wants to stop him, but she can't. So she basically takes the pistol and shoots himself. But then he's dying 12 years. His agony lasts. And then in this time, he keeps telling her how much he loves her. And then he dies. And then the implication is that she might also kill herself, because she realizes that she lost a great love that would not be repeated. She does not like Albert that much, the man who she married. She had already married him when he came back. So the novel was published, and it was a huge success. It was like a hit. It was published and republished and republished. And all of a sudden, in a matter of several weeks, Goethe becomes famous in Germany. And, people recognize him, they wave at him. He comes back to Weimar now. He's truly received as a hero, and his father now is convinced that he can become a writer. I mean, it's like a superstar, like a rock star today. All of a sudden, you publish a record, and then you're world famous. That's what happened with the letters of Werther. Now, for our purposes, what's very interesting is that the events that are described in the suffering of Johann Werther are very, very closely connected with the true events in Goethe's own life. Moreover, the girl that he met actually was named Charlotte, and he did experience this, what he kind of put in a literary form in terms of Werther. A lot of it was his own feelings, except he didn't kill himself. He was in love, terribly in love with Charlotte, and she did marry a different man later, but he basically, my understanding of his biography is that he felt guilty that he did not marry her, and she actually, it looks to me like she loved him all his life, and regretted and felt sorrow that their love did not materialize. So, and the reason that he felt guilty is very, very important of what he's going to write later, his greatest work of all time, Faust. But remember for the moment now that Goethe came out of that experience with Charlotte with a terrible feeling of guilt that he abandoned a woman who loved him. So the real story was not the way he portrayed it, but in fact, historians tell us that there was a man who committed suicide, and it was in the newspapers. So Goethe, what probably did, he could combine his own experience with the fact that he heard about a young man committing suicide, put it in a novel, and that's how you have suffering of the young Werther. In any case, why this novel became such a big hit? And why is it an important novel in the life of Goethe and in German literature? Well, obviously why? It's because of the feeling. It's because of the same thing as why Eloise of Rousseau becomes a big hit at the same about time. The centerpiece is the analysis of feeling. You live for love. That's what he's saying. You live to experience this exhilaration of love, that nothing could be more important than that. And we are guided not by reason. Come on, of course not by reason. We're guided by our emotions, by our passions, by our drive. Sturm und Drang, that's what it's all about. It's the passion that drives people, not cool, rational calculation. So this is the story. And of course, he becomes a great poet. And before I go to his greatest novel that would discuss his philosophy, I want to read you now one poem that would show you how beautiful it is. I'll first read it to you in English so that you understand so that you hear what this poem is about. It's about love, but it doesn't rhyme in English. It just gives you an idea of what this is about, and then I'm going to read it to you in German. So here's it is in English. It's called To the Distant One. So have I really lost you? Are you, O beautiful, flown far away from me? Still it rings familiar in the ears, every word and every tune, just as the walker's eye in the morning in vain pierces into the air, when hidden in the blue space, high above him the lark sings, so pierces anxiously here and there, through field and bush and forest my view, for all my song sings, "Oh come, my beloved, back to me." So this is in English, and now I want to prove to you how beautiful German language can sound. So habe ich wirklich dich verloren, bist du, o Schöne, mir entflohen. Noch klingt in den verwandten Ohren ein jedes Wort, ein jeder Ton, so wie des Wanderers Blick am Morgen, vergebens in die Lüfte dringt, wenn in dem blauen Raum verborgen, doch über ihm die Lerche singt. So dringet ängstlich hin und wieder durch Felden, Busch und Wald mein Blick. Dich rufen alle meine Lieder. Oh, komm, Geliebter, mir zurück. Komm, Geliebter, mir zurück. Oh, come, my loved one, to me back. So that's the poem, and I hope you appreciate how beautiful it sounds in German. Back to biography of Goethe. He read Eloise by Rousseau, and I think he felt very much pleased with that because it kind of confirmed him in what he was doing himself, and that is the hymn, a kind of a celebration of human feeling of love. But later on, he would have been a great poet, and as he is, without his philosophy, because his poetry truly established German language as a modern literary language. But he, of course, wrote something else, which made him even more great, and that is called Faust. This is a novel that he worked all his life. He actually came back to it over and over. He wrote part 1, and then many years later he wrote part 2, and then he came back to it in the 1820s and wrote more. I mean, he was totally obsessed with Faust, and truly Faust is the major, most important work of Goethe of all his life. And then there's an opera Faust, and there is all kinds of music written to it. So it is truly a kind of a in German literature, Faust one could compare to Shakespeare in English literature. It's probably the greatest piece of work ever written in German language. So important it is, and you will see why in a minute. So who is Faust? Faust is the mythical German character that existed in the fables of the Middle Ages, and in a legend. He is a doctor, Dr. Faust, a scholar. He's successful, and he's dissatisfied with life. He's bored with life. And by the way, this character is very much present in 18th century Europe and later on in Russia, the kind of a bored, educated person who doesn't know how to entertain himself and how to find meaning in life. And then the most important point is that he is meeting a devil, Mephistopheles, and he concludes a deal with the devil, with Mephistopheles, and the deal basically is that he sells his soul to the devil, and in exchange he's gonna get knowledge and pleasures, money, success, women, anything he wants, he's gonna get it. But he has to sell his soul to the devil, and he does. So he agrees to this deal, and then there is this kind of an elaboration on this, on and on, as to what it means and how still he cannot be happy. He can get all the money and all the women and all the wealth and all the knowledge, but it does not make him happy. So you forget the duty and the humbleness and the honor, but what you're in pursuit of uh, is money, women, success, and knowledge. Now, the reason this is such an important novel and that it made such a stir in European culture, as you could see, everybody recognized himself in this. Everybody, when you look down in your soul, maybe not you as young people who are innocent, but a lot of people did sell their, in a sense, sell their life to the devil, in a sense that they're no longer pursuing virtue. They're pursuing money, success, women with crooked ways. That is selling your soul to the devil. When you forget virtue, when you forget your honor, when you're ready to do whatever it takes to push others aside and move ahead and step over the dead bodies, which a lot of people do, figuratively or literally, that is selling your life to the devil. The reason Goethe became so famous is because his novel, Faust, touched the core of our civilization, touched the core problem with it. How do you keep virtue? How do you remain virtuous and kind and honorable and humble without betraying these issues in your pursuit of happiness, which everybody demands now is the mode of the time, pursuit of happiness and pleasures and wealth and so forth. Now, one other point I want to make about Goethe is that it seems to me, if you think about Faust and Goethe's career and the way that he was obsessed with it, I think, as my personal view, I might be wrong. There are specialists of Goethe who write books about him, but I venture to say my personal view. I think his experience with Charlotte, when the girl loved him and he betrayed her, and he went to do his career and become a state councillor and becomes a very important man and, you know, kind of like a director of the theater and advisor to the Duke. In a sense, it seems his life is proof that he did the same thing as Faust. He did sell his soul to the devil, not in a true sense, but in a sense that he did not pursue virtue. He did not pursue honor. He abandoned his love for career. Perhaps that is the explanation, that he was obsessed with Faust, obsessed with writing and rewriting it and trying to find meaning in the life and to assert some kind of a fine salvation. In any case, I'll stop at that because Goethe is long enough and complex enough. But there are two other great German scholars I'd like to address in our next videos, and that would be Johann Herder and, of course, the greatest of them all, Immanuel Kant. Thank you very much. I hope you know now that German literature is great, Goethe's poetry is fantastic, and it's an introduction to you into German studies. AP European History, Dr. Brovkin. Sign up!